Welcome back. Very good morning to all of you. So, since many months now, we have been talking and discussing about the prophetic teaching methodology. And last time was the last session of that topic. And from today onwards, inshallah ta'ala, for the next few weeks, we will start with another topic, another journey, which is critically important for us teachers, as educators, which is effective lesson planning. I'll start off with that topic. It's a very interesting topic and a very important and a relevant topic for us as practitioners in the educational arena. So when we talk about lesson planning, we have got to look at it from the perspective of preparation. Because preparation, as they say, is the key. When we look at someone who is building a bridge or constructing a building, invariably what we see is that they make a layout. They form a layout. There are architects, there are civil engineers that become a part of the process and the part of the planning process, right? That what will be the strength of the beam, what will be the strength of the pillars, right? How much will be the area, right? And what will be the width of the rooms, where will be the duct, where will be the pipeline, right? Everything is planned, it is chalked out, right? We never see anywhere, anytime that a building is being constructed or a bridge is being constructed, wherein just the laborers get together and they start pouring in cement and bricks and they start constructing without a plan. It never happens. Never ever it happens. Right? Let's look at another industry, the medical industry. When we go to a doctor, 8 minutes of the time, if we are spending 10 minutes with the doctor, 8 minutes out of those 10 minutes is involved in diagnosis. The doctor asks, when do you fall sick? When do you get fever? At what time of the day? Or how much is the fever? What is the temperature? Do you have cough? Are you also sneezing? Do you have a stomach upset? Is your stomach upset as well? Is your toilet proper? Right? Everything. Are you shivering? And if required, the doctor prescribes some tests to be conducted. The patient goes to the pathology, right? He conducts some tests, he does blood tests, x-rays, MRI, so on and so forth. And looking at those reports, then the doctor gives a prescription, which requires just 2 minutes to write a prescription on his letterpad. So what we see here in the medical industry is that the planning process consumes most of the time. We saw in the construction industry, in any industry, you go to the software industry, same process. There is a map that is laid out before the actual coding is done, right? There is a framework that is made, right? So we find in every industry that planning of the process is of critical importance. In no industry we find people starting the work without planning for that work. In no industry. And in software, we find that they don't just plan. There is something called as testing in the software world, if any one of you are aware of it. Wherein when the software is developed, it is implemented and then it is evaluated whether the software has any bugs or not, whether there are any hiccups in the process of implementing the software. And if there are any bugs, then those bugs are ironed out. Those changes are made in the code, so as to ensure that when the software actually goes on the floor, it runs smoothly. There is a job profile in the software industry which is called as testers. Their job only is to test the code. So what we find is that in every industry, we find people planning, people putting the plan into action and testing the plan for its effectivity, and then trying to improve the plan, improve the process, consciously thinking about the process, consciously putting in efforts to plan for the what do we call process. Now, this is something that happens in every industry. Our industry, our field of work, which is the education field, is the only field probably on earth wherein teachers tend to go, not all, but many teachers tend to go in the classroom, pick up the textbook and start teaching without making a lesson plan. Because they think making a lesson plan is a burden. They think making a lesson plan is an extra thing which is not required. In Urdu, there is a term, they say khana puri. Khana puri means even when the in charge, the supervisor, the principal, the coordinator, the academic in charge, whoever is the person in charge, when they tell you to make the lesson plan, the teachers generally do this Urdu term which is called as khana puri, meaning they make the lesson plan for the sake of making it. They just write certain things, and because they have to submit, they submit it. There is no conscious effort in seriously thinking about that plan, seriously thinking about the process that the teacher is going to implement. Rather, making of lesson plan is just a formality because the student demands it, the school authorities demand it. So write down certain things and submit it somehow. End of the story. So this is the mindset that many of the teachers get into. Not all, but some of them do. Which, as I said in Urdu, the word khana puri. Just doing a formality, just performing a formality, somehow writing certain things and submitting it, that's it. This is something that we don't find in any industry. Imagine if the architect just does khana puri or does a formality, rather than seriously thinking about the plan of how to construct the bridge or the building. He just completes the formality without giving too much thought into it. How will that building be constructed? That building will be constructed in an imbalanced manner, and tomorrow that building might collapse. Right? So this is something that we must understand. Like in every industry, in our industry as well, planning is of critical importance. So to begin with, what I am laying down is a framework for the conception of lesson plan. I'm talking about certain aspects of lesson planning. After the initial laying down of these important issues on the table with regards to lesson plan, then we'll actually delve into an actual lesson plan. Because as they say, example is better than precept. We'll pick up an actual lesson and we will actually go through the process of developing an effective lesson plan of that process, of that particular lesson, so that we get to understand how that lesson is planned. Right? Many a times in the educational industry, we hear about these terms: creative thinking, critical thinking, right? Collaboration, communication, the 4 C's, and developing the ability to think among the students, developing a scientific temper, right? And all of these terms and multiple intelligence and all of these theories we listen to. Generally, what happens is that these theories are taught as theories, but I personally do it the other way around. What I do is I pick up an actual chapter of an actual subject and we do an actual lesson planning of that subject, of that chapter. And then in light of that, we look at the theories. That is what I do. I do it the other way around. Right? I do it the other way around. So once we go through that entire chapter, then we'll reflect on the certain theories that exist in the educational arena. And we'll reflect it in terms of that chapter that we went through. We'll do it the other way around. Whether those theories were applied in our lesson planning or not, we'll do it the other way around. So that we get a deeper and better understanding of those theories and concepts. Because listening to and talking about critical thinking and creativity and collaboration and all of these terms is easy. But as they say, the proof of the pudding lies in its eating. How far are we able to understand the way how to actually bring those theories to life? How to actually implement those theories in our actual lesson plan? This is something that we will learn through an actual example, a real example of a real chapter. And we'll do that maybe in a session or two. We'll start with that process, inshallah. And inshallah, we'll go deep into the nitty-gritties of how to actually plan a lesson with one sample lesson plan. And once we understand the process, we can apply that to any subject, any what do we call, any chapter, any subject, any standard, right? When we understand the basic fundamentals, right? Because it's not possible to cater to all subjects and all standards. It's not possible. So we'll pick up one subject and one chapter of that subject, inshallah. All right. But before we actually get into that chapter, we will talk about certain aspects which are important to lay the platform to develop that lesson plan effectively. As they say, it is said by Abraham Lincoln had said that give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Very important statement. This is for us as teachers. If somebody gives me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Very interesting. The goal is to chop down the tree. So the work should be done on the tree. Why the work is being done for 2/3 of the time, the work is being done on the axe. Because unless and until the axe is sharpened, the process of chopping down the tree will not be effective. Right? So our period in our classroom is just half an hour. But if we do deep thinking, we might end up spending more than that half an hour in planning the process of that period. And I'm not saying that every teacher should spend that much time. Senior teachers who are well versed in their subject and well adapted to the process of teaching, they would require much lesser time. But in general, the concept that is being conveyed in this saying of Abraham Lincoln is that unless and until you spend time in sharpening the axe, the process of cutting the tree will not be effective. Similarly, in our industry, unless and until we consciously spend time in planning the lesson effectively, thinking about the different aspects of the process of delivering that chapter, delivering that lesson, we will not be effective teachers, The teaching and learning process that will unfold in the classroom will be hodgepodge, will be misdirected, will not have a rhythm to it, will not have a sequence in it, will not be well directed, will not result in effective learning. Now, what is the difference between the two terms? One is lesson planning and lesson goal. What is the difference between a lesson plan and a lesson goal? Can anybody help me out in the chat box? The difference between a lesson plan and a lesson goal. What's the difference between the two? Can anybody think? The difference between, I repeat, lesson plan and lesson goal. What's the difference? So I am not getting any responses, which is either you people are thinking, or I don't know whether you people are attentive enough. I would request you to respond. Yes, great.
Yeah.
Sister Rabia responded that lesson plan is to teach the lesson step by step. Very good. And what is a lesson goal? What is the lesson goal? Lesson plan is to teach the lesson step by step. Correct. Perfectly correct. What is a lesson goal? Lesson goal is the outcome. Brilliant. Fantastic. Brother Riyaz said outcome, the learning outcome. Very true. So the learning outcome, many a times what teachers who just write the lesson plan as a matter of formality, they actually write the lesson goal and submit it, because they are completing a formality. If I have to teach factorization to the students, if the teacher writes that in the lesson plan, I have to teach factorization, and I will teach factorization in a step-by-step manner, I will teach factorization in a gradual manner so that the students understand. I'll teach factorization in a manner so that the students learn how to factorize. Now, is such a lesson plan showing any aspect of actual process planning? No. Right? So, as Sister Rabia said, that the lesson goal is to achieve the conceptual understanding of any subject matter. So, teaching them factorization is the goal. That factorization is to be taught so that they learn factorization. But where is the description of the process? As they say, the devil lies in the detail. There is a saying in English language, the devil lies in the detail. So how are you going to introduce the subject matter? What kind of activities you're going to do? What are the probing questions that you're going to ask them? How you're going to develop the knowledge formation in the minds of the students? There are these several aspects which many a times teachers who merely complete the formality of writing the lesson plan do not think about consciously and deeply, because their goal many a times is to just write some damn thing and submit it. They don't think about the process in detail, right? So they end up writing the topic itself, elaborating the topic itself. Lesson plan is not the topic that has to be taught. So don't write the topic in the lesson plan. Lesson plan is the process with which you are going to complete the lesson, to implement the lesson. The process is important. Right? This is of critical importance, the process. So we must understand this thing. This is a critically important aspect, that we must not just complete formalities. We must consciously think about lesson plans, right? And then I will end up with one more statement, and then we'll continue next Saturday, inshallah. which is knowing is not equal to knowing how. Knowing is not equal to knowing how. What do you mean by that? Unfortunately, what happens in a online session is that the interaction level becomes, because this chapter, or rather this topic and subject, is very, very effectively conducted when it is conducted physically in a live format, right? There is live interaction. Unfortunately, this media that we are, forced to use, the media of Zoom, is not that effective, because there is a time lag between the response, between the question that I ask and the responses that I get on the chat box. That dynamic interaction doesn't exist. So the effectivity goes down by at least 50%. In fact, less than 50%. Because when I ask you a question, I need the dynamic interaction should take place. That is called as a workshop. What these Zoom sessions end up being is a bayan. It actually ends up being a lecture, right? It's really not a workshop, because workshops are sessions where there is an interaction between the speaker and the audience, right? But unfortunately, we have to make do with the system that we have, right? Something is better than nothing. Anyways, I'll just say what I wanted to say, and then we'll close the session. We are already at 7:30. Knowing and knowing how, the difference is, teachers many a times know the subject matter. They know the content that has to be taught, but they are not well versed in the process of teaching that concept, delivering that concept in an entertaining and effective manner. So they don't know how to deliver. That's the problem. And that's the process that we need to learn. Right? Knowing of content is one thing. Many teachers, they know the content well enough, but they don't know how to, in an engaging manner, deliver that content to the students. They don't know that. They don't know those skills. So in spite of knowing the content well enough, they end up being ineffective teachers. Because the content is known, but the approach, the method, the process of delivery is not well developed in their mind. So there is a difference between knowing and knowing how. So we should know the content as well as know how to deliver the content. And this is the process we will learn, inshallah ta'ala, in the ensuing sessions. I'm sorry for taking a couple of minutes more. Jazakumullahu khair. Wa akhiru dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khair, Ghufraan Sahib. Alhamdulillah. Ghufraan Sahib dealt the topic very interestingly, very important topic, lesson planning. Every subject has a purpose, every lesson has a purpose. In education, anything done for the sake of formality is of no use. In education, we need to do everything with a purpose. Unless and otherwise, purpose of taking each class is fulfilled, purpose of taking the lesson will not be fulfilled. Unless purpose of taking the every lesson is not fulfilled, the purpose of taking the subject itself is lost. So every period is very important. In order to make the every period effective, one should have the right lesson plan. Rightly said, and Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair, sir. Very important topic. I really congratulate all the teachers who are participating.